What's up, guys? Four-wheeler Doctor back again. Today we're going to be working on this 97 300 Fourtrax Honda. It's got done a lot of stuff to it. A little snorkel on there and CDI replacement. But next order of business is the wheel bearings. As you can see, the wheel's a little bit wobbly. Assuming this one's about the same way. See, odd thing is this one's tight, but the other one is bad, wore out. So I'm going to replace both of them while we're in here, and just wanted to show you guys how to do it. I don't think it's going to be very tough, or I hope it isn't. So start off with, we're going to pull the tires off, tires and rims both sides, and I'll cut the camera back on once I get those done. Next item probably be getting the axle nut off. But we'll get the tires and wheels off first, and then I'll cut the camera back on. Alright guys, got both the wheels off. Like I said, that other side over there doesn't really feel bad, but while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and replace both of them, because I know if I don't do it now, I'll be back in a week or so with it messed up. So the next thing we need to do after we get the wheel off, we need to get this axle nut out of here. So pop the cotter pin up like that. This one might be kind of tough to get out of here because it's actually rusted a little bit. What I like to do is try to start pushing it through a little bit and then catch the little loop on the end of the cotter pin with a pair of wire snips or cutters, and then just pry it out of there with a little bit of leverage off the edge of the cutter, and most of the time that's enough to get it to come out. Just like that. We'll get that axle nut off. I think about a 21 or 22 millimeter. Try 22. Not a 22. Actually, that's a 21 and the 22 slot. It's a 22. So knock this off here. That was very easy. Alright, next thing we need to do is remove the shock bolt. This shock was put on aftermarket with an aftermarket carriage bolt nonetheless. So I will replace that with the correct bolt. It should be a 14 millimeter bolt and nut. So got the axle loosened up. Next thing we need to do, turn the wheel over and get this cotter pin out of the bottom ball joint down here. I'm gonna have to lay down on the ground to get it, but we'll pop that cotter pin out and then loosen that 17 millimeter nut up to pop that ball joint loose. Let me get down on the ground here and move the camera around. I'll cut the camera back on in a sec when I get ready to pop it out. Alright guys, I hope y'all can hear me. It's coming a monsoon outside, beating on this tin roof. So I got this 17 millimeter ball joint castle nut loosened up after I removed the cotter pin from it. What I like to do on these things is run them till just the nut is flush with the end of the ball joint. And then this is the ball joint. I guess this would be a press that I like to use. It works a whole lot better than the old fork style. The fork ones always seem to break the boot and make a mess with grease everywhere. So I like to use these this little press type thing here, and it works great. I think these are fairly inexpensive. There's a matter of fact, I might have got this from Harbor Freight, which I don't buy many things from there, but that there is actually paid for itself numerous times. Alright, so there you go, it popped it out. You see there. And now what we want to do is try to get this axle, the axle out. Raise the camera stand up here just a hair. And I'm probably going to end up having to tap on the end of the axle shaft with a hammer just to get it to break loose. It's about like the nut that was on there. It's rusted a little bit. Pull up on it, hit it with the hammer. There you go. It pushes the axle right through, And that's what you want to do. Keep picking up on it until the joint falls out. Alright, next item we need to take off is going to be the tie rod end. So we're going to have to, in order to press this bearing out, we're going to have to remove this whole knuckle. So you're going to want to take the tie rod end out. It's 17 millimeter as well. It's got a cotter pin on it, so pop your cotter pin out of there, both sides, and it will, it's not really pressed on there. The tie rod end isn't, so it should pull right off once you get the nut off of it. And sometimes, normally not when you're loosening it up, it's mostly when you're tightening it up, that tie rod end will try to spin on you. And it's actually got a notch here in the top about where this pliers are. You can't hold it with a pair of pliers, but you can put like a 17 millimeter wrench in there and it'll pull it right off. So let me see what we got. If it'll come off, or if I'm gonna have to use the 17 millimeter wrench trick. So comes right off, and tap the end of it, pops right out like that. And now what we need to do is get this part off, this what we got here, cotter pin and the castle nut. And I'm gonna go ahead and slide this hub off, and you actually can see the bearing. The balls are in there, and part of the race came off on here. So I have to get that off. I'm also going to loosen or remove these 4 12 millimeter bolts here to pull this brake panel off of the knuckle, and that'll be it. So okay, what we're gonna do first is I'm gonna go ahead and pull the 12s off, flip this around, and then that will allow the knuckle to spin around so I can get in there with the impact and get it off. And I'll show you a little trick to getting that off with the impact too. So cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, getting this last nut off of the top ball joint. I said this was a trick, it's just how I get it off. Use a swivel 1/2 inch drive, 17 millimeter. Well, this one you don't even have to use impact. It'll just spin off with your hand. So, which that doesn't really surprise me on this bike. Alright, so I don't want to take it all the way off. We're going to back it back up until it's flush with the end, like I did before. Slide this little fork tool on here. Get this 22 millimeter that fits it. Well, it didn't even pop out. I don't think the ball joint was all the way in there. The only thing about using this is you got to protect your teeth. Because if this thing slings off of here, it's probably going to hit you in the mouth. 9 times out of 10, that's always how it seems like. And it comes off at a pretty good rate of speed, so just your best bet's to look away. Alright, so there's our knuckle. Now we got to get these bearings out of it. To start off with, we're going to pop these seals off, front and the rear. And then we'll look at pressing the bearing out. Also going to have to figure out a way to get this race, which I don't think it's going to be too bad because it's rotating around on here. This inner race off of this brake drum here. And alright, I'll cut the camera back on in a sec. I'm just going to use a seal puller, pop these seals out, and I'm pretty sure there's a snap ring in here. When I get down to the snap ring, I'll show you how to get it off. Alright guys, I've got the seals out. You can see the snap ring. This is actually on the outside. The snap ring that's in here. Hopefully it's going to come out. I'm going to have to, there it goes. I'm about to say I'm going to have to wiggle this thing around with a screwdriver, but I believe I can get it. I tell you, we never know the beauty of using two hands until you only got one hand to use. There it is. Alright, so there's your snap ring. In this case, you need some pliers that, as you squeeze them, it squeezes it in. I just got a set of them. Makes it life a whole lot easier. So now what I'm going to do is get a bearing that will fit this inner race. Press this thing out of here with the little press over here. You can beat these out. Naturally, it's preferred to press them because it's not quite as harsh on the bearings, but I know people that have beat them out all their lives. So, alright, let me get that rigged up in the press. I'll cut the camera on and show you what I'm working with. Alright guys, this is my little setup and device. I got a 2-inch socket on the bottom. Not real sure what size that one is on the top, but it fits right on the inner race of the bearing, and it should allow me to push it right out of there. I'll give you a size on it. 1-inch socket on the top, and put a little pressure on it. And that's all there is to it. So now we're going to press the new one back in there, and we'll be done with this side. Alright guys, I'll cut the camera back on when I get this new one rigged up in here to press back in. Alright guys, I got it rigged up here. I tapped this bearing in just a little bit with a hammer, and also put some oil on it to help it slide in there. Just tapped it in to kind of get it centered up, and I've got 1 5/8 inches on the bottom, 1 7/16 inches on the top, and that one on the bottom kind of fits up in a little groove that goes around the edge of the knuckle. So you just press this thing in until it bottoms out. I'll make sure it gets all the way down in there so you can get your snap ring back on it, and I believe that is it. Back the pressure off. That's your finished product, at least for the bearing. And so slide your snap ring back in here, and the next thing you're going to have to do is push your seals back in. See if I can get this installed with one hand. There we go. Don't have it all the way in there, but you just tap it, and there you go, it snaps into place. And the way this one was put in initially, the flat seal goes on the outside or toward the brake. I usually just tap these in with a hammer. Not quite like that. I like to tap them in to where they actually stay. Tap it in until it's flush. Alright, and then flip it over, and this, goodness gracious, there went my seal puller. Tap it over, and then, or flip it over, and then this seal goes on the back side here. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm actually going to get a socket that will fit right around this thing to keep from, because you can't really beat on it with that little lip on there. So let me get a socket and see what size socket I need. Probably won't be so lucky to use one of these that I've already got, and it's not. So let me find a good socket to stick in there, and I'll tap that in, and then we can just put the thing back together. So let me give you a size on that socket, and then I'll cut the camera back on. Alright, so I used a 1 3/4 socket. This is all 3/4 inch drive stuff, and it fits right on there. Doesn't mess your lip up when you take it off. And that's pretty much it. Now you just put it back together and jump to the other side. It takes about, I don't know, I think it took me maybe about 30 minutes to do that one, so about the same thing for the other side. Alright guys, well, that's it for a wheel bearing install on a 300 Fourtrax. Y'all check out my other videos, hit the like button, subscribe. Have a good night.